It started as a normal morning in Phnom Penh. The sun rose over the glass towers of Prince Holding Group, shimmering like a promise of wealth. Inside those towers, deals worth millions were signed every hour. Real estate, finance, charity, cryptocurrency, each carrying the golden seal of one man, Chen Zhi, Cambodia's modern prince. But that morning, something shifted. Far away, in a silent office in Washington, D.C., a sealed indictment was being prepared. At 8:32 a.m., the Department of Justice pressed send, and the illusion cracked. The headlines exploded. $15 billion crypto scam exposed. Across continents, victims began to recognize the name that had drained their savings, their hope, and their freedom. Behind Chen Zhi's empire of glittering towers lay a network of barbed wire, encrypted servers, and human misery. A machine built to deceive, to trap, and to erase identities. Tonight, you'll step inside that empire.
You'll see how a billionaire built a kingdom on lies, how thousands became his invisible slaves, and how justice crossed borders to dismantle it. Stay until the end, because what you'll learn may save you, or someone you love, from becoming the next target. It was a humid night in Phnom Penh, October 14th, 2025. When most homes had turned off their lights, a different kind of light flickered on thousands of computer screens around the world. The moment the U.S. Department of Justice announced a 48-page indictment that would shake the global financial system. At the center of it stood Chen Zhi, a 38-year-old Chinese-born tycoon who had become one of Cambodia's most powerful figures. To the public, he was the founder of Prince Holding Group, a sprawling conglomerate that built skyscrapers, sponsored charities, and funded lavish public events. To investigators, he was the architect of one of the largest digital crime empires ever uncovered.
For more than a decade, Chen's organization had operated behind a glittering facade of wealth. His compounds in Sihanoukville and Phnom Penh were marketed as training centers for online marketing. But inside, workers were beaten, their passports seized, and their every click monitored by armed guards. Victims from Asia, Europe, and the US were lured into fake crypto investments, romance scams, and guaranteed profit platforms that never existed. When the DOJ's press release went live at 8:32 p.m., agents were already freezing digital wallets holding 127,271 Bitcoin, nearly $15 billion. The numbers were staggering, but the human toll was worse. Thousands of people stripped of freedom, hope, and identity, all to feed an empire of deceit. Outside Prince's headquarters, the night was silent. Inside, executives were deleting files, shredding contracts, and wiping hard drives. The empire that once promised prosperity was collapsing in real time.
And yet, its creator, Chen Zhi, was nowhere to be found. When Chen Zhi arrived in Cambodia in 2014, he was barely 30, but already carried the confidence of a man who believed he could buy a kingdom. Phnom Penh, still scarred from decades of struggle, was the perfect stage for reinvention. Money could rewrite history there. One tower, one donation, one handshake at a time. Chen built the Prince Holding Group from nothing and made it look like everything. Billboards proclaimed a new era of prosperity. His face appeared beside ministers and movie stars. He sponsored orphanages, built schools, and donated gold Buddha statues to temples. The press called him the Golden Prince of Phnom Penh. But beneath the golden surface, another empire was forming. Behind the mirrored glass of Prince's high-rise offices, small teams began designing what they called digital outreach centers. These were not tech startups. They were the seeds of an international scam network. At first, only a handful of employees knew the real purpose. to create fake trading platforms that mimicked legitimate crypto exchanges. Every week, money poured in from new investors, ordinary people in the US, Europe, and Southeast Asia, convinced by smooth-talking brokers trained to sound like friends. By 2016, Chen had opened a training facility in Sihanoukville, a coastal city turning into a casino capital. He said it was for developing young digital talent. Locals saw something else. Fences of barbed wire, guards in black uniforms, and buses arriving at night with passengers who never came out. Still, the legend of Chen Zhi grew. He bought a British title of nobility, acquired Vanuatu citizenship, and flew in private jets engraved with the letter P. His mansion glittered with chandeliers imported from Italy. To diplomats and investors, he was the face of a new Cambodia, cosmopolitan, modern, unstoppable. What no one realized was that the entire empire rested on deception. Chen had built a palace of glass, but the foundation was made of stolen lives and digital lies. And inside those training centers, hundreds of people were about to learn that paradise had a price. From the outside, the compound looked like a tech campus. Rows of white buildings, satellite dishes, and a tall fence topped with barbed wire glinting under the Cambodian sun. The sign read, Prince Digital Center. But the people inside knew better. This wasn't a campus. It was a cage. Phones were confiscated the moment recruits stepped through the gate. Their passports disappeared into locked drawers. "You'll get them back after your training," the guards said, smiling thinly. Weeks passed. The smiles vanished. Each morning, workers were lined up in narrow corridors and assigned to cubicles filled with outdated computers. Their job? Create fake profiles, seduce victims online, and convince them to invest in crypto platforms owned by the group. Every word was scripted. Every message was tracked. Cameras watched from the corners. Guards patrolled between rows of desks. Those who resisted were beaten or sold to another compound along the Thai border. At night, the sound of crying and the hum of generators blended into one long, sleepless noise. Among the captives was a Thai technician named Krit, who had answered an online ad promising a high-salary IT job. He realized too late that his contract was a trap. For 3 months, he memorized scripts, pretending to be a Singaporean financial advisor. Every day he watched his messages steal more money from strangers and from himself. One stormy evening, Krit managed to slip through a service tunnel and cross into a drainage ditch beyond the fence. Mud-soaked and terrified, he reached a roadside cafe and begged for help. His report to local police was ignored, but his story reached a journalist in Bangkok, and from there, Interpol. That single escape cracked open the myth of Prince's digital centers. It was no longer rumor. It was evidence. The empire's golden gates had started to rust, and the world was finally beginning to look inside. While the compounds in Sihanoukville churned out lies, the real power of Chen Zhi's empire pulsed invisibly through blockchain. Every message sent by the captives, every investment made by a victim, flowed into a web of cryptocurrency wallets so complex it looked like a digital galaxy. Each wallet led to another, and another, until the trail vanished into encrypted fog. From a modest office in Singapore, Chen's financial engineers ran what they called the mirror system. It cloned the appearance of legitimate exchanges like Binance and Coinbase. Victims believed they were trading real crypto. In reality, they were transferring money straight into Chen's labyrinth,
Billions moved daily, tiny transfers stacked by algorithms to avoid suspicion.
The money was laundered through British shell companies, offshore trusts in the Cayman Islands, and luxury real estate in London. An apartment overlooking Hyde Park, a mansion in Mayfair under a false director's name, even a Van Gogh painting, paid in Ethereum, shipped under diplomatic cover. Then came a fracture from within. A systems architect known by the alias Spectre contacted U.S. investigators. Spectre had seen too much. Fake transaction ledgers, scripts written in Chinese, and secret instructions from Chen's encrypted email. Rotate wallets every 18 hours. The data dump he provided contained over 64 gigabytes of blockchain logs, each line a breadcrumb leading to billions in stolen funds. Analysts at the FBI Cybercrime Division and the U.S. Treasury's Financial Crimes Unit worked for months to decode it. When the pattern finally emerged, it formed the unmistakable symbol of a golden phoenix. The same logo stamped on every Prince Holding Group building. By late 2024, agents had traced 127,271 Bitcoin, worth nearly 15 billion US dollars, directly to Chen's network. The blood money had a digital heartbeat, and it was loud enough for the world to hear. And in Phnom Penh, as the investigation closed in, the Golden Prince began to prepare his escape. By the fall of 2025, whispers had turned into headlines. International reporters from Reuters, BBC, and the Phnom Penh Post began publishing stories about digital slavery camps linked to Prince Group. The Cambodian government denied everything. Chen Zhi smiled in photographs, still attending charity galas and ribbon cuttings. But behind closed doors, he was bleeding. The FBI called the operation Golden Cage. Agents from Interpol, the U.S. Department of Justice, and Britain's National Crime Agency coordinated across 4 continents. The goal? Freeze Chen's assets, seize his Bitcoin, and expose the political shields protecting him. At 2:14 a.m.,
October 14th, 2025, an encrypted command was sent to servers across Europe and Asia. Execute warrant. Within seconds, dozens of wallets tied to Prince Group went dark. In Singapore, one of Chen's top financial officers was detained. In London, luxury penthouses registered under shell companies were raided. And in Washington, D.C., the DOJ released its 48-page indictment to the public. The headlines hit like an earthquake. Cambodian tycoon indicted for $15 billion crypto scam. Social media erupted. Victims around the world recognized the faces of the brokers who had ruined them. Survivors from the compounds flooded online forums, sharing photos, scars, and names. The silence was over. Inside the Prince headquarters, chaos spread like fire. Executives smashed hard drives with hammers. Files were burned in office courtyards. Surveillance cameras were unplugged. By dawn, the building that once gleamed like a monument to progress stood hollow, its windows reflecting the first light of judgment. But one figure was missing. Chen Zhi's private jet, tail number VPCZH, had departed Phnom Penh hours earlier. Destination unknown. His phone, once the nerve center of a billion-dollar empire, went dead. Interpol issued a red notice by noon, labeling him a fugitive. Some claimed he'd escaped to Macau under an alias. Others whispered about a yacht drifting somewhere in the Gulf of Thailand. The Golden Prince had vanished. And yet, the empire he built from deception was collapsing behind him, one encrypted file at a time. The morning after Chen Zhi vanished, Cambodia woke to a silence it had never known. Prince Group's glass towers stood untouched, but their owner had become a ghost. Banks froze his accounts. Luxury cars with the P emblem disappeared from the streets. And across the world, investigators were connecting the final dots of a digital empire that had deceived millions. The U.S. Department of Justice confirmed the largest crypto seizure in history. 127,271 Bitcoin, valued at nearly $15 billion US. The press release read like a war bulletin: charges of wire fraud, money laundering, and human trafficking, each carrying decades in prison. In Washington, FBI Director Eleanor Grant told reporters, "This case shows that even the richest cannot hide behind code. Every blockchain leaves a shadow." That shadow led to London, where the National Crime Agency froze over £400 million in property. Mansions in Mayfair, penthouses overlooking Hyde Park, and a private art collection featuring stolen antiquities. In Singapore, financial regulators revoked Prince Group's investment licenses. In Vanuatu, Chen's purchased citizenship was annulled. Interpol's Operation Golden Cage expanded.
Dozens of Chen's lieutenants were arrested. Liang Bo, the network's chief tech officer, caught at a Bangkok airport with encrypted hard drives strapped beneath his clothes. Su Wei, his accountant, found in a Macau casino trying to exchange digital tokens for chips. General Dara, a former Cambodian police official accused of shielding the compounds, detained by a joint task force. Inside the seized data, agents discovered something darker: documents labeled Harmony Project. It listed over 64 political donors connected to Chen's shell companies, suggesting layers of protection that reached deep into Southeast Asian politics. While the U.S. pursued the financial trail, Cambodia quietly reshuffled officials. No one admitted to knowing Chen. Everyone had a photo with him. In March 2026, a special tribunal convened in The Hague to process the cross-border evidence.
The courtroom echoed with testimony from victims. A Filipino call center worker who had been imprisoned in Sihanoukville for 6 months. A young woman from Poland who lost her life savings to a fake crypto exchange. A Cambodian security guard who confessed through tears that he'd been just following orders. Each story peeled back another layer of Chen's empire, how it lured, trapped, and consumed. The tribunal declared Prince Group a criminal enterprise disguised as philanthropy, but justice had limits. Chen Zhi himself remained beyond reach. Satellite traces of his private jet ended over the Gulf of Thailand. Some believed he was hiding in Dubai under a false identity. Others whispered that he'd been silenced by his own allies. His face never reappeared. Only the myth remained, a phantom haunting the digital world he once ruled.
The verdict was read in absentia. Chen Zhi, also known as Edward Chen, is hereby found guilty of transnational fraud, human trafficking, and laundering illicit assets. A warrant for his arrest shall remain active indefinitely. As the gavel struck, the courtroom fell silent. Screens around the world displayed the seized assets, wallet addresses now tagged "Property of the United States." Billions that had once been hidden in code were now visible to all, frozen in eternal transparency. In Phnom Penh, workers dismantled the golden P logo from Prince Tower. Beneath the sunlight, rust-colored marks formed the faint outline of the empire that once promised salvation and delivered ruin. One by one, the lights went out in Chen Zhi's skyscrapers, and for the first time in years, the city slept without his shadow. In the end, Chen Zhi's story wasn't about one man. It was about a system that worshipped wealth and ignored the screams beneath it.
He built an empire on promises of freedom, but his foundation was fear. He called it progress. His victims called it prison. Even after his disappearance, echoes of his crimes lingered across borders. Bitcoin wallets lay frozen, their silent codes whispering the price of greed. Empty compounds in Sihanoukville stood like skeletons, walls still scarred by names scratched into the concrete. Help us. We are still here. Governments promised reform, but the digital underworld had already evolved. For every empire that falls, another rises in the shadows of the internet. Scammers learn, systems adapt. The next Chen Zhi may already be online, smiling behind a new logo, offering you a new opportunity. And that's why this story matters. Because it doesn't end with him. It ends with you, the listener, the investor, the person scrolling through messages at midnight, deciding whether to trust a stranger who seems too kind, too smart, too perfect.
Remember, every scam begins with a story that feels real. Every trap begins with a click that feels safe. If you take one thing from this, let it be this. In a world built on illusion, awareness is the only armor. So protect your data. Verify before you trust. And if you ever feel that something is too good to be true, it probably is. The world will remember Chen Zhi, not as a tycoon, but as a warning. A reminder that evil no longer hides in dark alleys. It hides behind corporate glass, glowing screens, and smiling faces. You've just listened to crimes that shocked the world. If this story reached you, tell us where you're listening from. Are you in your car on the way to work, or lying in bed with headphones on? Let us know in the comments. Hit like, share, and subscribe, so these real stories of power and deception can keep reaching those who need to hear them.
Because somewhere out there, another empire of lies is already being built, and someone needs to see it before it's too late.